Welcome to From Doubt to Destiny,
the podcast where dreams come alive. I'm Eden Ryder, the Dream Maker.
And I'm Stacie Trott, the Queen Maker. We're here to give your dreams the royal treatment that they deserve. Get ready to unlock your queen
and unleash her dreams. Welcome back to From Doubt to Destiny. I'm Eden Ryder, and we are picking up where we left off, where I am interviewing my co-host, Stacie Trott, and we are diving into her very unique marriage story. For those of you who are just joining, Stacie has married her husband not once, but twice. So we are unraveling that story, and we cut things off last week where we thought was a kind of a good stopping point, and we are picking up with that episode today. So if you haven't heard part one, go back to last week's episode. And for those of you who are just returning, I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode.
So it all started unraveling from there. I moved out, skipping all the whole painful, but like a lot of drama, and moved out, and then back into my parents' house, and then it just got worse and worse. And it was literally like, at some point, I think we're gonna do a movie because some of the stuff that I went through, and I don't know, probably after a year, it was like you couldn't make this stuff up. The stuff that like the things he was saying and doing, and the chaos, and like I just remember being like, I don't know how. This cannot be my life. I don't know. And I just, back to the point of the conversation we had with the good girls and perfectionism, like I had done it almost perfect. How the hell did I get here? It was like my mind was completely blown that I had managed to try so hard to orchestrate my life with wise, almost perfect, not perfect, but almost perfect. Like if perfect was here, I was like right next to it, trying to get it right. How did I manage to it's like I felt like someone hit a nuclear button and just like blew my life up. That's how I felt. Mm-hmm. So I was like, how did I get here? How did I get here? It was really bad. And that was like, if the beginning of the breaking was the marriage, the breaking got exponentially worse during the next probably 2 years. Probably 2 to 3 years.
Going through the divorce portion.
Going through the separation, eventually moving into my own place, still married, not knowing what was going to happen in this, I call it a purgatory place of married, but living a single life, but not single, so not dating. So I'm
checking that box of
checking the box of like, what am I? I'm not sure. And so it just was such a mess. And somewhere in the midst of all of that, I was still a lawyer, servicing clients, growing. I started at that point, I was already doing deals around the world. So I'm working with clients in Asia and Europe. And I don't even know, looking back, how I managed to not just continue to grow and excel, but like not lose my mind. It was really bad.
I was going to say, is there something like, it sounds like listening, like I think, again, it's easier to reflect or like listen and be like, oh, this was a silver lining and this was a silver lining. But it sounds like listening to you, like there was part of it, like a silver lining was kind of that breaking down. It was like the strengthening of, again, like your relationship with God, and that kind of that like, okay, like let me kind of surrender almost and like release some of this control, because I know
that when that came, but I think it took me anywhere from, I want to say, a year to 18 months before I finally surrendered.
And you actually saw it probably as a even a positive thing?
No. Now, at this point, I'm not seeing it as a positive thing, but I'm just like, I literally remember, and I just recently spoke at my church, and I remember saying this because it was a pivotal moment for me. I was sitting in a service at the beginning of the year. Usually the first week of the year, we have like service every night. And I was sitting in the service, and I had literally been basically my version of negotiating with God about how he needed to fix this and what fixing it looked like. And it just, it's my default. I'm a lawyer because I'm an analytical negotiator. I'm not a lawyer who became an analytical negotiator. I was already that. So
Yeah.
I was literally like, here's how you need to fix it. This is what we need to do. And I was not getting any kind of signs from what was happening that God was taking notes or cues for me at all. And I got to the point where I realized, oh, this is going to be done differently than I think, and I'm not going to be able to orchestrate this. And I remember being kind of like, it was like a sobering thought of
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to do this his way being God's way, and you're not going to be able to control the tempo, the timing, the temperature, none of it. You're going to let go and you're going to fully surrender, or else he'll wait until you stop. And I just
Mm.
remember being like, okay, I'm exhausted, so I'll stop. But man, this feels even more scary than what I just finished going through, because now I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm going to have to stop trying to control the outcome, the process and the outcome. And I was sitting in the service. So I had been doing this negotiating with God, talking to George, like trying to like see if we could fix this. And he would be saying these things that sounded so crazy. And I was like, oh my God, this man is out of his mind. How did I marry him? Like, it was so crazy. And I was sitting in the service, and the woman who was preaching said, I think she literally like stopped the service. And she was like, there's somebody in here who God is telling me to say to, stop trying to change the situation because the situation is changing you. And I remember I was sitting in the back, and I remember being like, she's talking to me. And she like was like, so if that's you, take that note, and went back to the message. And I was sitting there and I was like, crap, he stopped the message to let me know, like, I'm not playing around with you. And so I was like, okay, fine. All right. I'm done. No more negotiating. No negotiating with him, George. No more negotiating with you. I'm just going to surrender. And I surrendered in that seed. And it was a true condition of my heart. Like, my heart just was like, all right, whatever you, not my will, but thy will be done. And I got my own place. I think it was that month I went and I started looking for, because I'm like living out of boxes in my parents' house. It was just a total disaster. And then I went and got my own place, and I was like, okay, I don't know where this is going, but I'm just going to go where you lead me. And everything about the place I got, where the building was, the rent, the doorman, I mean, all of it was like the leasing agent and I became friends. Like, it was so God divinely orchestrated. And it was like he was turning all the lights green that were taking me away from the marriage. And I was just like, why is this? I mean, I had a friend who came and was a designer, and she helped me decorate the apartment from the beginning. We bought everything before I moved in. She got me all set up because she was like, you will not be in here depressed living out of boxes. So like the night I laid my head down on the pillow moving into the apartment, my apartment was almost completely furnished and unpacked. So it was so like God orchestrated. And fast forward, went through kind of just a series of other things and conversations. And ultimately, what I left out was a big part was the night that we got home from me finding out that he was cheating with the more color and detail. We'd had this marathon meeting in my pastor's office. And that night I went home and was like, kind of like, all right, now God, I'm like, you were in this kind of like whenever you've kind of had, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but like whenever you've experienced a death, when you wake up the next morning after someone that you love has died, what has always happened to me is like, for a second, I forget they died, and then I remember, and then I go, oh, that wasn't a dream. Like, man, my life has just had like this life-changing moment. So it was kind of in this like foggy state where it was like, I don't even know how to process what's next. Like, my brain can't, computer overload, don't know
Yeah.
what's happening. So I go home, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, phone's hanging on my chest, take the phone up, look at it. There's like this whole thing written in there. And I'm like, what is this? And I read it, and it's like not a summary, a transcript of a conversation that I had with God in the middle of the night. I don't remember having the conversation when it happened. I just know that I opened up my phone and it started with, I am that I am. And literally, God had said, turn and don't look back until I tell you to. This is my marriage and not yours. When I give it back to you, it'll be mine and not yours. you will do this in my timing and not before. And I knew immediately that was like year 7, you waited 90 days, you called, you tried to put it back together. That was not my timing. You will do this in my timing and you will not go ahead of me. And I remember reading it being like, oh my God. So now I'm, sitting in my new apartment in this quasi, I don't even know what to call it. Purgatory is what is what I actually called it. And going, God, I don't see any hope of how this is going to be restored. And I don't know when you're going to do it. And maybe you're going to do it 20 years from now. We'll have whole lives with other people and kids, and we'll get like remarried later. And, you hear those stories, you see those movies. And so I was like, I got to get divorced because I'm not going to sit here and be able to just like, not have my life just feel like it's completely just in this state of purgatory indefinitely. And there's a whole life backstory for why that was like a huge thing for me. So I get divorced, and then I'm like, oh wow, I thought this was gonna free me so I could
Like
be
feel
better,
like,
and I'll be relieved, and then I can put a period at the end of this thing, and it's a failure. But I think you said from an early episode, there's no failures, just
feedback.
yeah. Well, this was not feedback, but it was a lot of feedback. But yeah, a lot of people. Like, I just needed to put a period on like years of just like chaos, it felt like, and then just start fresh. And
Mm-hmm.
that was my hope. That was my plan. I'm surrendered, so I'm not talking to him. I'm just gonna I gotta move on. I'm trying to be obedient. But I just couldn't, I didn't get the relief. I didn't get the relief or the release
That
that
you
I had
thought like
hoped
that would give
for.
you.
And so then for the next 6 months, I slept on my couch on the weekends and only got up to open the door and take the food from the delivery person and go to the bathroom. And I just like did that for 6 months, and I realized I'm depressed and I'm like a recluse in this apartment. Like, it was always dark. And I realized you're not going to be able to live like this. This is not a sustainable continuum. So you're going to have to figure something out. So I decided to book a trip to the Caribbean. I went by myself, first time ever. I didn't even call any girlfriends. I was just like, I don't know that anybody's timing is going to line up with mine. Anybody's budget was planning for this. I'm just going to do this because I need a reset. And I went to this hotel and I stayed there for a week, and I said, God, I'm not leaving until you give me a word. I cannot go back and continue to live the way that I was living on my couch in the dark. And I was so desperate that I even was like, God, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. Whatever it is. You want me to stand on my head and hop on one leg? Whatever it is, I'll do it.
Try all the things.
And yeah, all the things, whatever it is. It sounds crazy. I'm going to do it. So what I got was, I heard God say, pray for him every day. Pray that my will be done daily. And I remember my response back was, that's not fair.
I was gonna say, I'd be like, wait a second. You want me to do
Yeah,
something
like
for him?
I need help, and you're
Yeah.
telling me to go home and pray for him. Like, I
Not what I
maybe you
had in
didn't
mind.
hear, not what I had in mind. But actually, I took a step further. I said, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And I said, he doesn't deserve my daily prayers. And the response I got back from God was, why not? I did it for you. And that was the first time in my entire life that I finally understood Christ, cross, death, salvation. It was, when you weren't thinking of me, when you weren't worthy, I sent my son to stand in your place and to sacrifice before you even accepted him, when you weren't thinking of him. He stood in your place when you weren't worthy. And I'm asking you, and I'm inviting you to stand in the gap and help save somebody else's life. And I remember feeling like, oh, I'm not worthy for what you did. He's not worthy, but worthiness is not it's not the calculus. It's not the right question. Is he worthy? And I'm grateful because I was able to have that sobering revelation, and I realized that God was inviting me to be a part of something that he could have chosen someone else to do. And so I took my things and I packed my bag and I went home, and I was like, I said before you told me what it was that I would do it and I would obey. And so I had already surrendered, and this is part of what surrender looked like. And I went home and I decided I'm going to pray in the shower every day because I needed to marry this with something I did daily, because I was so determined that I can't go back to the dark hole that I was sinking into, that I was like, this is the only way out of the hole, then this is what we're doing. So I called them my shower prayers, and I came home and I got in the shower every day, and I wouldn't allow myself to like lather up with soap until I prayed. It was like, I can't forget to do this. This is just too serious. This is literally, it felt like life and death for me. And so I started out with shower prayers, and I remember hearing this guy would come to my church, and he had said that God had told him to pray for somebody who was literally like going around and like maligning his character and saying all these things, and God had told him to pray for him. And so he was like, all right, I'm gonna do it, but I don't really mean what I'm saying. And God's like, I don't care, do it anyway. And so he would pray that God would bless this person that was literally persecuting him, and he was like, I did it until my heart changed. And so I remember knowing that it was possible from hearing that guy's story. So I started out by asking God to help him and to bless him. But I was like, help him, but hurt him a little. Help him, but hurt him. And I really meant it.
Yeah.
I meant it. Like, can you help him, but like hurt him too? And the help him, hurt him prayers shifted over time to really help him. And then I went from help him to warring and being calling on angels, and just starting to really, I turned into a prayer warrior in that shower over a 6-month period of time, very slowly and organically. And I only realized I was a prayer warrior later, when I realized I had learned how to really pray the power of prayer in that shower. And then we crossed paths, and at church in the parking lot, I was trying to dip out quick and not see him. And so I knew it was God, because I was like, God, I don't want to orchestrate or manipulate any interaction with him. I understood you clearly when you said you will do this in my timing and not before. So I was very afraid of the before. Like, God, you were going to have to make this so clear it's you. And I remember slipping out and then crossing paths with him in the garage and being like, I left early out the back side exit that nobody uses. Intentionally to not run into you before service was over. Why am I seeing you in the parking garage? And he's like, oh, can I take you to dinner? And I felt led to say, let me think about it. And then I went home and I thought about it, and a girlfriend had like encouraged me to go. And then I was like, maybe I should go. And then I felt like I didn't feel like a no from God. And so I went. And right before I went, a coworker had said to me, I think we're going to end up having to meet this a part 1 and a part 2.
I was
because
just
I realized it's 55 minutes in, and I cannot believe that I'm still talking, but I'm going to finish this part, and then I'll give you an organic way to wrap up. And we can do a part 2 to finish it, because I think this hopefully is going to help somebody. But the friend of mine who was not a Christian, who I had told I was going to dinner with him, and I was like, I'm not going to tell him that I'm praying for him though, and that I'm waiting. I'm just going to like hear what he has to say. And he was like, why wouldn't you tell him? Won't your God keep you anyway? And I was like, well, yes, he will. And I shifted from being afraid, because I was afraid if he knew that I was praying and waiting, that would extend the time. Like, oh, if she's waiting for me, then I can rock out and just swing back around and pick her up in 5 years. And I was like, I can't have that happen. So, but that was me trying to take control. And then when he challenged me, he was like, won't your God keep you? Like, you talk about this amazing faith that you have. And I was grateful for the question, because I went in and I said, well, yes, he will. And I knew at that point, God had literally saved me from wanting to not be here anymore. I had suicidal thoughts. I had depression I battled through. I had nights when I took more NyQuil than I should have, just to get rest and relief. And so I was like, I know that I'm here because he has kept me. And I don't know what the timing is, but I know that he's going to keep me. At this point, I really fully do trust him. And so I went to that dinner and I said, we talked and we got to the end of the dinner, and he's like, so what's going on with you? And I was like, I'm praying and waiting for God to restore us. And I think that totally blew his mind, because I had been you're blocked. You can't call me. He
Right.
didn't even know where I lived. Like, there was no access to me at all. And to my surprise, that honesty and transparency and the shower prayers had changed my heart and had healed some of the bitterness and anger. And after that, everything changed. He quit his job, he put his things in storage, he went to this program in another state and was there for 7 months, and to totally like reset his thinking and just slowed everything down. Like, New York is so fast.
Yeah.
And this was like quiet grass, hills, trees, and it just slowed everything down and helped reset. And he came back and slept on my couch for a week, and I'm fast forwarding through all the things. And our pastor remarried us after many conversations and a lot of prayer. I remember him telling us he had to consult with his spiritual mentor because he was
The pastor
yes, my
or
pastor,
bishop. Yeah. Okay.
who's the
Yeah.
bishop, said
Of like,
I had to phone a friend and find out if
am
this
I
is
aligned
something
with
I
this
could
next
do.
iteration
Correct.
of, okay.
Correct. And I remember he came back home and slept on my couch, and for that whole week we didn't know if he was going to remarry us or not. And he called us on Saturday and said, tomorrow after church, come by my office and I'll marry you. And I remember he was probably thinking like, I think this is what I should do, but I don't know why I'm doing it.
Okay.
And so he did, we did, and that was the beginning of what I call Marriage 2.0.
2.0.
We are in the 10th year of marriage and have a 6-year-old little boy who is just the sweetest, cutest little thing. And Marriage 2.0 has been hard. And I don't know if I would say different hard than Marriage 1.0, but way harder than I thought it would be. And in an earlier conversation, I said, I think that topic was, am I ready? I thought I was ready because I had done those shower prayers. I had become a
Right.
prayer warrior. God had saved me from like all this darkness. And so I was like, I trust him and it's going to be fine. And I'm just going to do the same things I was doing when I was alone and separate. I'll do that in the marriage when it gets hard, because I'm like, of course it'll be hard. Marriage is hard. And then we got remarried, and I was like, whoa, 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 time out. Why is this so much harder than I thought it was going to be? And it was like new levels, new devils. I had no
Yeah.
idea that our story of restoration was going to be as powerful as it is, and as it will be as it continues to be told over time. And so there was a lot of opposition and resistance and growth and development and all the things, and it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And there was different hards. And over the course of, I would say, probably years 1 to 8, it was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Thank God now I'm more in the hill than in the valley part, and I'm super grateful. And to where you started, Eden, that you said, anybody who knows me knows that I'm passionate about my marriage. I'll just kind of maybe conclude with a big part of the reason why I'm so passionate about marriages is because I think marriage is the foundation of our society. And that of a really good, strong marriage comes good, strong children that feel like a grounding and a sense of foundation of who they are. And then from that comes like strong people that can go and do great things in the world with strong marriages. And marriage can be this generational blessing over the course of a family. But the passion for me comes from when I was isolated and felt so alone in that beginning of the first one. And I don't ever, if it's possible, for anyone that is in my orbit to go through that alone, not knowing there is help when there is help. And I went through that, I think, so that I could be what I am humanly possible of being for someone else in that place. I basically want to be what I didn't have.
Right.
And so I have helped young, newly married women get through the hard parts of the beginnings. I unfortunately, and I've said this before, know several newly married people who have been like, what the hell? Why was this so hard? What it was supposed to be, and I say supposed to be in air quotes because I don't know many with that, supposed to be amazing story. Like they didn't get that. And so I'm passionate about wanting to help people get through the hard and to have support in the growing and development of what marriage can produce. And not everybody that's married should be married. So I am not a pro marriage at the point of like at all costs, no matter what's happening, stay married. I believe that divorce is something that is a tool that needs to be utilized when it's the right tool to use. And I'm grateful because one of the things that I got on the other side of getting divorced and remarried is I'm not afraid of divorce. So the divorce didn't kill me. I think the holding on and not surrendering to God almost killed me. But when I got that part right, I got tougher and stronger and more resolved. And now my anchor is fully grounded in knowing that I know whose I am. And it helps me know even better who I am. And I'm grateful. I just recently, he and I had lunch and we were walking out of lunch and we were talking about a couple who had been through a terrible, like they stayed married, but a horrible, very public infidelity and downfall. And we looked at each other and we were like, we're so glad that we went through what we did our way, our story. And we never felt like that at the time in the pain of it. But like I said earlier, when you're in a good story or a bad story, you don't fully
No,
realize
it's a
you're in a
story.
story. You don't know it's a story. And so I'm always wanting to just like, how can I help someone through the hard parts, through the curves, through the turns, and what is just a part of your story. And if you keep going and you get through the turn and you lean in or lean out, however you're supposed to do, I've never really ridden a bike, but I think like motorcycles, you literally lean into the curve
Curve,
so
yeah.
you don't fall off the bike. So that you can't, I want to be like the support to help someone lean into the curve and get through the curve because it does get better. And that doesn't mean you stay married, but you will get through this hard part and it will not break you. You can survive. So that's a big part of where my passion comes from. And I left all the fun parts for the movie that will do something. The fun, colorful parts that are gonna be like in the book and the movie. But yeah, that's my marriage, divorce, remarriage, high level. But hopefully I gave enough a little bit of color of some of the details of how I got here. And I don't know that I would be as grateful as I am truly for the marriage, but just who I am today after what I've been through if I didn't go through that stuff. So I thought God was trying to kill me, but I realized he was breaking me to rebuild me into a tool that he could use. And the other thing I'll just say is my first name is Stacie, my middle name is Elizabeth, and growing up we have the same middle name, Elizabeth, you and I. But when I was growing up, my mom would always sign my birthday cards with not my name, but what my name means. And Stacie and Elizabeth mean one who shall rise again, consecrated unto God. And so I grew up my whole life not just knowing, obviously, my name, but knowing what my name means. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I remember being like, okay, this is what my name means. And as I went through that breaking process and God rebuilds me, I get it now. One who shall rise again, consecrated unto God. That is definitely now who Stacie Elizabeth is, because he took me from the dark places to the light place of not it's all puppy dogs and ice cream. Life is still almost harder in some ways than what that dark season was at times, but I'm consecrated unto God. I know who I am, and I rose again. And I know now when it gets hard, I'm just in a turn. I gotta take some deep breaths, used my tools. I've added other tools to the toolbox now, and I can get through it. But you were going to say something, Eden. The crystallization of what you got from all of that.
No, there is a lot. As I say, I didn't want to, there's so much I got from it. I feel like I have a million and one questions. So we'll have to see if it's, if I, we
Part
might have to wait
two.
for the movie. Yes, part two, the movie, something. But um, A, what you said is honestly like what I personally got most out of it is thinking like, A, it makes sense, so much even more sense to me, the person you are today, like hearing everything you went through and like your passion and like even now I'm getting emotional. I don't even know why I'm getting emotional. Um,
I had to hold
Jeez.
it together myself.
Yeah, I was like, I wasn't emotional the entire time, and now like I think thinking about it and like I think there is so much still honestly to unpack there that I like I'm like I didn't want to get in. I'm like we'll be on a whole
Nope.
entire season of talking about this if I keep getting in there, but A, it just makes so much sense the person you are and how passionate you are about helping especially other women, and just like your strength. And I think, like you said, I got out of it a lot, which I want to ask you personally your words of it, but just the woman you've become and how something that sounds so horrible and like an awful experience, but the person that made you and actually like the beauty that came out of that and how you've been able to impact others' lives. And then I didn't, again, marry my husband. He wasn't my husband at the time, but again, you were a pivotal in even our experience when
The
there
first
was
breakup.
potential, the first breakup. And then again, just even moments you married us. So it's just so clear, like you're, I guess, like it's a gift, but also like the pain, everything you had to go through, but that's allowed you to help others in certain their times of similar or to avoid it altogether. Um, and then also, I didn't know that your name meant that, but I love that. Me and Steph are very big on like the meaning behind names. When you, we just think like when you give it to a child, like they're gonna take some of that on, whether you intend it or not. I feel like there's just a lot
Yes.
of that label being given to them that they're going to take on some of that. So that's beautiful to hear as well. That I like it helped. I think during your story as well. But okay, yeah. So this one was a long one, but with I think good intention, and I think it was a story that I know will help a lot of women, but someone in particular maybe that needed to hear this right now. So we may be back with a part two just to solidify some of these takeaways because there's
Takeaways.
a lot there. Um, but thank you so much for everyone who listened. But thank you, Stacie, just for your vulnerability and honesty because I know that's not easy to tell. So thank you. And for your, I know everyone always asks, so, but also to your husband because he's his thoughts on sharing this.
I think we talked about we're definitely gonna at some point have both of our husbands
Yeah.
either together or separate. Although with the four of us, it's gonna be a party. But yeah, but definitely, yeah, would love to see him share. And it just, I guess, maybe the asterisk to what you're thinking about is that I'm sharing with his full permission to share. And to the extent he and I disagree whenever I share, he's like, give more detail, tell more so that you can help more people. And so if you stayed and listened this long, I guess that's the question I get asked the most is how does he feel about you sharing? And I can say he is my biggest supporter and he is very much we are in one accord on wanting to help other people. So if it can help, let's tell it. We definitely don't want anyone to go through what we went through if it's possible. And I think we were chosen so that we could. I remember saying to God, if you get me through this, I'll help whoever you send me to or you allow me to. If you get me through this, if like and I don't know that he needed that like, assurance from me. He already knew the condition of my heart, but I remember saying, if you get me through this, if you just get me through this. So I know what it feels like to be in a place where it's like, if you just get me through this. And I know sometimes people make promises to God when they're in desperate places, and then when he gets them out, they forget and they go back to exactly how they were. I was authentic if you get me through this. And so I'm a different person And I think it's so interesting. You've known me for 5 years and you're like, now I understand you better.
Yeah. Yes.
Now I understand you better. The intensity, that's where it comes from. Yeah, so to be continued. Thank you for facilitating this conversation. It's a little challenging to know where to start. So your questions and I guess it was ordained and divine that we didn't have this conversation before, so you could really ask with true curiosity. Wait, what happened? And then how this happened? So we could do it here for the benefit of the listeners. So thank you, Eden.
Thank you.
Remember to unlock your queen
and unleash her dreams.